Harborview City was a beast of steel and salt water, breathing smoke into the night sky. Down at the docks, the automated cranes, skeletal and silent, slid containers across the black water, their lights glowing like distant, angry eyes. The air was thick with the tang of brine and the metallic scent of the ironworks district. Far above, the rhythmic thump of a helicopter blade cut the quiet. It was the Coastal City Special Crimes Unit, the SCSCU, circling like a patient vulture. Maya Rowan, 29 years old, ran a hand through her tired hair, the grit of her shift clinging to her skin. As a community paramedic, her nights were spent stitching up the wounds of the Ironworks district, a place the rest of Harborview preferred to forget. She was a single mother, and this job was both her anchor and her chain. Her shift had just ended, the clock ticking past 10 p.m. When her radio crackled, it was not a call for her district. It was a Priority 1 dispatch to Seacliff Point Prep. Seacliff Point, the name tasted like ash. It was the polished, gleaming world of new money and old power, a fortress of education her daughter, June, attended on a scholarship that felt more like a social experiment, a charity gala, an emergency. The gala's benefactor was Cassian Vale, at 36. Cassian was a paradox. He was the legitimate face of Vale Logistics, a billionaire who had revolutionized global shipping with autonomous technology. He was also the dawn of the Vale Consortium, the inherited title of a criminal empire he was allegedly trying to reform. The whispers in the city said his reforms were just a different kind of war. Rumor had it he'd just severed a major cross-border money laundering pipeline, and in doing so, had painted a target on his own back. When Maya arrived, the scene was chaos, but a polite, wealthy chaos. She pushed through tuxedos and silk dresses to the backstage area, a maze of catering carts and audio equipment. A donor had collapsed, a simple faint from champagne and a tight corset. Maya knelt, her voice calm and low, cutting through the panic. "I'm Maya, I'm a paramedic. I need everyone to please give her space." She worked quickly, her movements economical and sure. She took vitals, administered glucose, and in moments, the woman was sitting up, embarrassed but stable. From the shadow of a lighting rig, Cassian Vale watched. He had been observing the crowd, his eyes scanning for threats. When the paramedic arrived, he had seen professionals, but she was different. She did not command the space. She centered it. She calmed the patient while simultaneously managing the small crowd of onlookers, her authority quiet but absolute. She possessed a stillness, a core of compressed calm that he recognized because he shared it. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine sliced the air. It was not part of the string quartet. A small, dark drone zipped low over the courtyard, its red sensor light sweeping the guests. On the main stage, the massive truss holding the finale fireworks display sparked. A bank of monitors showing the event feed dissolved into static. Maya's head snapped up. Her training was not just medical, it was situational. She saw the panicked technicians pointing at the control board. Error signal. System failure. She moved before she thought, her eyes scanning the firework rig. Something was wrong. The wiring was too sloppy. Tucked behind a primary ignition box, taped in black, was a package that did not belong. It was not pyrotechnics. It was an improvised device. A small digital timer glowed red, 2 minutes. 0200, the label. North Arc Pyro was a cheap, misspelled forgery. A shadow fell over her. Cassian Vale stood beside her, his presence a physical weight. He did not look at her. He stared past her, toward the drone now hovering above the stage. His voice was a gravelly whisper, not meant for her ears, but for the microphone he knew was listening. "You think you can hide?" He raised one hand in a sharp, subtle gesture. Instantly, the sprawling festive lights of the gala vanished. The courtyard plunged into near blackness, the only illumination coming from the emergency exit signs and the terrifying, steady red of the timer. 0130. Maya did not panic. She dropped her jump bag and ripped it open. Cassian was already moving, his dark suit blending with the shadows. He did not ask what she was doing. He saw her hands and understood. "The radio frequency," he said, his voice flat. "It's a dead man's switch. If the drone signal is lost, it blows, but they're also waiting for a go command." "Then we isolate it manually," Maya said. She pulled out a set of trauma shears and a hemostat. "Block the signal. I'll cut the charge." 0100. Her fingers, steady from years of threading needles and finding veins, traced the wires in the dark. She found the primary. Cassian produced a solid block of milled metal from his jacket, a magnetic cipher key. He pressed it against the receiver. The drone above them wobbled, its signal jammed. 0030. "Now," Cassian ordered. Maya clamped the hemostat on the wire leading to the primary detonator, a brutal, definitive crush of metal. She took the shears and cut. The timer kept ticking. 20 seconds. "It's on a secondary timer," Maya hissed, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It's not just RF. It's chemical." She saw it a small glass vial, set to crack and mix the accelerants. She had to isolate the power source. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Cassian saw her fumbling for the battery pack. His large hand covered hers, not to stop her, but to steady her. "Here." He guided her shears with his own strength. They cut the final wire together. The red display froze. 0007. Silence. The sudden wail of sirens flooded the void, the SCSCU, finally arriving. Red and blue lights washed over the courtyard, revealing the two of them, frozen, inches apart. They were both breathing hard, the adrenaline roaring in their ears. Their eyes met. It was a collision. Maya saw the lethal intelligence in his gaze, the cold assessment that had just accepted her as an equal in combat. Cassian saw the steel in hers, the raw, unblinking courage of a woman who ran toward the fire. It was not a desire, not yet. It was a dangerous, immediate respect. It was the spark of recognition between two people who understood precisely how to survive. As the armed officers swarmed the stage, shouting commands, the massive video screen behind them flickered. It lit up, bright white against the dark, displaying 5 words that echoed the Dawn's earlier threat, a message from the shadows. "Welcome home, Dawn." The message on the screen burned into the night, a digital epitaph for the night's civility. "Welcome home, Dawn." It was not a greeting, it was a challenge. Cassian Vale understood the signature, the bombing attempt, like the series of disruptive drone attacks plaguing his logistics hubs, bore the hallmarks of the Sable Crown Syndicate. They were led by Victor Dorn and his sister, Catalina, ruthless, ambitious, and fundamentally opposed to Cassian's attempts to legitimize the Vale Consortium's operations. They saw his reforms not as progress, but as weakness, an opportunity to seize the city's undercurrent of power. The aftermath was a suffocating blanket of flashing lights and sharp questions. The Coastal City Special Crimes Unit was quickly sidelined by a more formidable and quieter federal presence. The Federal Commerce Integrity Task Force, the FCIT, descended. In Harborview, the FCIT's mandate was a gray zone, ostensibly to monitor the flow of goods, but in reality, to watch the two titans, Vale and Dorn, who controlled that flow. Agent Eli Dakers approached Maya while she was packing her jump bag, the adrenaline beginning to ebb, leaving a cold exhaustion. Dakers was a man in a rumpled suit, with eyes that seemed to have seen too much and cared too little. "Miss Rowan," he said, his voice devoid of inflection, "you were first on the device. We need to secure any evidence you might have touched. Your gloves, your shears, any fragments." Maya paused. She'd seen men like Dakers before. She had worked countless shifts in the Ironworks district, treating overdose victims and a dozen other miseries that men like Dakers classified as acceptable losses. She had seen the FCIT coordinate raids that forgot to warn the homeless shelters, prioritizing asset seizure over human life. Her experience as a paramedic had taught her a profound distrust of systemic power. "I handed everything over to the SCSCU forensics lead," she lied, the small, sharp fragment of the North Arc pyro casing heavy in her pocket. All she wanted was to get home to June. Her daughter was 8 years old, a small, brilliant creature of logic and creativity, her mind happiest when lost in the precise folds of origami or the coding of her robotics kit. When Maya finally entered their small apartment hours later, she found June asleep at the kitchen table, head pillowed on her arms. Her school-issued tablet was still glowing. On the screen was a file Maya did not recognize. It looked like a complex blueprint, a schematic of shipping containers. Several were marked with a stylized, repeating letter R, assuming it was part of a new game. Maya kissed her daughter's head, closed the tablet, and carried her to bed. 2 days later, an invitation arrived. Maya was requested at Vale Tower. The stated reason was a mandatory wellness check following the traumatic incident. Mr. Vale was apparently concerned about delayed shock. Maya knew a summons when she saw one. The tower was a shard of black glass plunged into the heart of the city. Cassian's office was at the very top, a vast expanse of chrome and glass that offered a god's-eye view of the port he commanded. He was dressed in a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. "Miss Rowan, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair. "I trust you are feeling no ill effects." "I'm fine," she said, remaining standing. "Good." He did not waste time. "I'm restructuring my foundation's community programs. I want to hire you, lead medical consultant for the dockside initiatives." Maya felt a flare of pure, cold anger. "A consultant? You mean a prop? You want to put a paramedic's face on your press releases so the city forgets what you really are." Cassian turned slowly from the window, his gaze locking onto hers. "And what am I?" "You're the man who starts the fires," she said, her voice low and steady. "And then you expect a round of applause for handing out bandages. This community outreach is just you trying to whitewash the blood off your money." He took a step closer. The air crackled. "I'm cleaning up the trash. Miss Rowan, the Dorns, and the cartels they feed are the disease. My methods are aggressive, but they are necessary. Your methods nearly leveled a school full of children." His jaw clenched. "I clean up trash with real money, not with tweets," he countered, his voice a low growl. "I do not posture for cameras like the politicians you seem to trust." He gestured to a massive screen on the wall. "I do not hide. This is the man who planted the device." An image appeared, security footage from the school, 3 days before the gala. A technician fiddling with the pyrotechnic rig. Jules Hart, an electrical engineer. "He did contract work for my charity fund." "Did?" Maya asked. "He disappeared an hour after the gala." The pieces were forming a puzzle that was vast and dangerous. She left the tower without giving him an answer. That night, her burner phone, the one she kept for off-the-books emergencies in the district, vibrated. A blocked number. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was digitized, metallic. "Do not give the file on your daughter's tablet to anyone. Not the feds, not Vale. It is the key." The line clicked dead. Maya's blood turned to ice. She ran to June's room, snatching the tablet, the schematic, the letter R. It was not a game. Someone had used her daughter. Someone had targeted her. The realization ignited a primal fear that eclipsed everything else. Her protective instinct, the core of her entire being, took over. She grabbed her personal phone and dialed the private number Cassian's assistant had provided. He answered on the first ring. "I will not be your prop, Mr. Vale," she said, her voice shaking with a controlled fury. "And I will not be a pawn for the FCIT. Someone targeted my daughter. Someone used her to pass me a file." There was a dead, heavy silence on the line. The calm, corporate negotiator was gone. "Who?" The word was a single, sharp shard of glass. "I don't know, but I have what they want. I'll work with you. I will be your consultant, but we are setting new terms. This is not about your war or your reputation. This is about my daughter's safety. It must be absolute. That is the only price for my cooperation." Cassian Vale did not hesitate. The Dawn answered. "They made a mistake," he said, and the cold rage in his voice was more terrifying than any bomb. "They brought a child into this. I accept your terms. My resources are yours, and I give you my word." He paused, the promise etching itself into the air between them. Anyone who touches June will disappear from the map. Cashin's response to the threat was total and immediate. Within an hour, a black sedan, operated by the private firm Orchid Security, collected Maya and a sleepy June from their apartment. There was no discussion. It was an extraction. Their destination was Horizon House, a structure of impossible glass and dark wood cantilevered over the cliffs of Palmyra Heights. It was less a house and more a fortress, a breathtaking cage. Orchid security personnel, discreet and armed, moved along the perimeter. Maya kept her distance, her arms crossed as she watched June explore the new space. She was grateful for the safety, but chafed against the loss of control. Cassian, however, did not press. He did not crowd her, did not try to justify the luxury he had imprisoned them in. Instead, he had anticipated them. The kitchen, sleek and cold, was stocked with the specific brand of organic cereal June loved. On a low table, a new, advanced STEM robotics kit sat waiting. He was smart, Maya conceded with a flash of irritation. He knew the way to the mother was through the child. They ate dinner in a tense silence, the three of them at a massive reclaimed wood table, the lights of Harborview glittering far below. Cassian spoke quietly to June about her robotics, his questions surprisingly insightful. Maya watched him, analyzing this new facet of the Dawn, the man who could order a war, and, moments later, discuss the merits of servo motors. In the middle of a sentence, the house seemed to inhale. A subtle, ambient hum shifted pitch. It was not an alarm. It was a notification. The house was breathing. "System status," Cassian said to the air. A disembodied, etching, neutral voice replied, "Orchid AI reports anomalous signal. Burner phone associated with Jules' heart has pinged. 2.1 kilometers. Southeast. Signal is active." Cassian placed his napkin on the table. The movement was deliberate, final. He looked at his security lead, who nodded and moved toward the door. "I will be back," Cassian said, his voice flat. "Wait." Maya stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm coming with you." Cassian paused. "That is unnecessary. You are secure here. Your security just found the man who planted a bomb at my daughter's school, the man who used my daughter as his mule. This is not your world, Vale. It is a crime scene. And if he is injured or scared, you need me. You need a paramedic, not just your muscles." She walked past him, grabbing her EMT belt from the entry hall and fastening it around her waist. The familiar weight settled her nerves. "I am not one of your assets to be benched. I will not have decisions made for me." A flicker of that same respect from the gala night lit his eyes. He gave a curt nod. "Stay in the vehicle until I clear it." The location was an abandoned municipal garage, smelling of rust and old oil. Cassian's team, 3 men from Orchid, moved with a silent, fluid precision that spoke of military training. They entered in darkness. Maya waited, her heart pounding a heavy rhythm against her ribs. Seconds later, Cassian emerged, dragging a frantic, terrified man. It was Jules' heart. "I did not mean it." Jules was sobbing, collapsing onto the wet concrete. "You have to believe me. She made me. Cassian's voice was cold. Catalina Dorn." Jules was shaking violently. "She said it was just a warning to scare you off. But it is Victor, her brother. He's launching Stowaway. He's moving something big." "Define Stowaway," Cassian demanded. "A new network, hiding people, product, anything, inside smart containers. Containers that report false manifests, false weights, false everything." Maya stepped forward, the light from the SUV catching the tears on Jules's face. "The file, the one on my daughter's tablet." Jules flinched. "It was the only way. Catalina was watching me. I gave it to June, disguised as an AR filter, a harmless little robotics game." He looked at Maya, his eyes desperate. "It is the decryption key, the key to the Stowaway schematic. I knew, I hoped, you would find it, that he would find it. It is the only thing that can stop them." The confession struck Maya like a physical blow. The violation was profound. You put a target on an 8-year-old girl." Her voice was a low, dangerous tremor. Cassian looked at Jules, his expression unreadable, but his fists were clenched. "He worked for my foundation," Cassian said, the words tasting like acid. "I vouched for him. This failure is mine." Before Maya could respond, the wail of sirens echoed down the street, the SCSCU, closing, fast, simultaneously. Maya's personal phone rang. She looked at the screen. "Agent Eli Dakers, FCIT," she answered, her mind racing. "Agent Dakers. Miss Rowan, we have an active warrant for Jules Hart. My intel says you are with Mr. Vale. You will surrender the witness to my authority immediately." Maya looked at Cassian. She was trapped, caught between the city police, the federal task force, and the Dawn. Cassian held out his hand. Maya gave him the phone. "Agent Dakers, this is Cassian Vale," he said, his tone pure ice. "The witness is under my protection. I will not feed a man to a leaky system just to watch the Dorns walk free. You want him? You come through me." He ended the call, tossing the phone back to her. The sirens were closer. The air was electric. "We have to go," Cassian said. "No," Maya said, planting her feet. The anger, the fear, and the confusion coalesced into a single point of absolute clarity. "No more running, no more half-truths. You brought me into this. You want that key." She tapped her pocket. "You give me the whole truth, all of it. What is this war really about?" Cassian stared at her, the sirens washing them in red and blue. He saw the unbending steel in her spine. He made his choice. He bundled Jules into the SUV and drove, not back to Horizon House, but to a darkened data hub in the port. There, he opened his personal, encrypted files. He showed her everything, the cold shipping lines, the black market tycoons they fed. It was not just drugs and guns. It was human trafficking. It was illicit biopharmaceuticals. He showed her the intricate web of shell corporations that funded politicians and shadow bankers. "Victor and Catalina are just the front," he said, his voice raw. "Stowaway is how they plan to control the entire coast, to make the black market untouchable." He had made himself vulnerable. He had handed her the truth. Maya looked at the screen, at the names, the routes, the sheer scale of the darkness. She finally understood. "I will help you," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I will be your medical and humanitarian liaison. I will help you cut this out, but on my terms." He waited. "I have absolute veto," she said. "Anything that puts my daughter at risk. Anything. It does not happen. That is the deal." Cassian looked at the woman who had defused a bomb with him, who had faced him down, and who was now willing to walk into the fire. "Absolute veto," he agreed. "You have my word." The target was Pier 37C, a cold, windswept stretch of the port that smelled of diesel and brine, according to the intel squeezed from a terrified Jules Hart. This was the Sable Crown Syndicate's research and development lab. They were testing a new generation of smart containers, built with a radar-absorbing composite shell, designed to move men and materials completely off-book. Cassian's plan was not a brute force assault, it was surgery. He mobilized Vale Port Tech, his private technology division, the automated gantry cranes, silent giants that usually moved thousands of containers a day, would be his instruments. Maya organized her end under the perfect cover, a bright blue food truck, emblazoned with the Vale Civic Trust logo, parked at the edge of the pier. Ostensibly, it was serving free coffee and hot soup to the night shift dock workers. Inside, it was a fully equipped tactical field station, complete with trauma supplies and encrypted communication links. June's safety was the non-negotiable center of the operation. She remained at Horizon House, happily engaged in a robotics project with Valerie Cade, the brilliant young science tutor from Vale Tower. With them was Echo, a highly trained K-9 Cassian had introduced as a new friend, who now shadowed the girl's every move. The operation began at 2 a.m., under a moonless sky. Cassian and Maya moved through the canyons of stacked containers, both dressed in dark work gear. "We are alive!" Cassian murmured into his comms. High above, the massive cranes began their silent ballet, rearranging the stacks according to a falsified emergency maintenance schedule. Maya held up June's school tablet, the AR filter, the robot game Jules had planted, now active. She scanned the rows of identical steel boxes. The screen shimmered, where her naked eye saw only serial numbers. The tablet revealed a hidden layer of data. The stylized letter R flared up on 3 specific containers. The redundancy nodes, she whispered, her voice tight. Jules was right. These are the decoys in the shipping schedule. They are the ones being loaded. A nearby cargo manifest screen, usually displaying weights and destinations, flickered to life. Catalina Dorn's face appeared, sharp and illuminated by a cold blue light. It was a private live stream, routed directly to Vale's secured network. "Working late, Dawn," she purred, her voice dripping with amusement. "This is beneath you, hiding in the shadows with the help. Come back to the dark. There is enough for both of us. Just name your price." Cassian stepped out from behind the stack, his face a mask of cold granite. He looked directly into the camera lens, his gaze unwavering. "My ikigai is not for sale." Catalina's smile did not falter, but her eyes hardened. A man's purpose for being is a luxury. Cassian and luxuries burn. The screen went black. A deafening groan of metal split the night. It was not one of Cassian's cranes. "She hacked the auxiliary network," Cassian yelled. Looking up, high above them, Crane 7, an older, manually operated rig at the edge of the pier, swung its arm wildly. A container, weighing 27 tons, detached from its magnetic locks. It fell. A block of steel aimed directly at them, blotting out the stars. Time slowed. Maya did not think. She reacted. Her paramedic training was about seeing risks in milliseconds. She saw the container falling, but her eyes also registered the mandatory safety gap between 2 adjacent container stacks, a 3-foot buffer zone. She grabbed the front of Cassian's tactical vest, using all her weight to haul him backward. "This way!" She threw him into the narrow, dark gap just as the 27-ton box struck the concrete where they had been standing. The impact was an explosion of force. The ground buckled, sending shrapnel and pulverized cement flying past their refuge. They were pressed together in the dark, vibrating from the shockwave. Cassian's chest was hard against her back, his breath hot on her neck as he shielded her with his own body. "You are fast, paramedic," he breathed, his voice tight with adrenaline. "You are slow, Dawn," she shot back, pushing against him to get enough air to breathe. "My operators have her," Cassian said, tapping his earpiece. "She's locked out. They have regained control." They emerged from the gap, covered in dust. "The redundancy node," Maya pointed, using the AR filter. "That one. That is the one from the schematic." "Take it," Cassian commanded into his comms. A Vale crane swooped in, its magnetic locks engaging the target container. It lifted it high, suspending it 60 feet in the air. "Hold it," Cassian said. Another crane moved in, this one armed with a specialized plasma cutting tool. It tore the side of the container open like a tin can. Nothing fell out. The container was empty of large cargo. "What?" Maya started. "Look closer," Cassian said. The interior of the container was a mobile workshop. A sophisticated, hidden compartment lined the walls, holding fabrication units and 3D printers. "They are not just moving product," Cassian said, disgust in his voice. "They are manufacturing." The machines, now exposed to the night air, were high-end circuit board printers. Jules's intel confirmed it. They were manufacturing ghost circuits for counterfeit bank cards and untraceable payment systems, a core component of the Sable Crown's money laundering. The wail of sirens cut through the night, the SCSCU. "The local police," Cassian said, frowning. Someone must have called in the noise. But as the squad cars skidded to a halt, they were immediately cut off by a fleet of black federal vehicles. Agent Eli Dacre stepped out, his expression smug. "We will take it from here. Mr. Vale," Dacres announced. "This is an active FCIT investigation." His team swarmed the pier, their guns drawn, and immediately secured the wrong container, the one Catalina had dropped. "They are seizing the decoy," Maya whispered, realization dawning. "They are taking the empty, smashed box as evidence." "Someone tipped them off," Cassian said, his voice deadly quiet. "They tipped them off before we even opened the real one." By the time Dakers realized his mistake, Cassian's team had already swung the real container, the workshop, onto a secure transport and moved it deep into the Vale-controlled sector of the port. The FCIT was left with a pile of debris. Back at Horizon House, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a cold, calculating dread. "Dakers was too fast," Maya said, pacing the glass-walled living room. "He knew where to be, but he got the target wrong. He is not the mole. He is a puppet. The mole is someone higher, someone who fed him bad intel just to disrupt your operation, not to stop the Dorns." She stopped, looking at Cassian. "Jules, the mole knows we have him. Jules is the only one who can identify the real players." Cassian stared out at the dark water. "Then we bring the war into the light. I will hold a press conference. I will expose the composite containers, the ghost circuits, everything." "No," Maya said sharply. "You cannot think. If the mole is high up in the FCIT, who do you think signs the witness protection orders you go public, and you paint a target on Jules? They will either discredit him or silence him before he can ever testify. We will lose our only leverage." Cassian did not take Maya's advice. He called the press conference, but he was strategic. He held it at the docks in the shadow of Pier 37C, but he never mentioned Jules' heart. Instead, he presented validated, sterile data. He spoke of anonymous security breaches, of a new composite shell technology, and of the ghost circuit printers his team had discovered. He announced that Vale Logistics was voluntarily grounding its entire autonomous fleet for a full, transparent security audit. The media swarmed, a sea of microphones and flashing cameras. The questions were sharp. "Mr. Vale, is this just a publicity stunt? Are you admitting your systems, the ones you sold the city, are vulnerable? Is this a Don trying to whitewash his reputation?" Cassian was handling them with cold precision when a new figure approached the podium. "Deputy Director Mara Quaid, FCIT," she announced, her voice smooth and practiced. She smiled, a wide, political smile, and placed a friendly hand on Cassian's arm. "The Federal Commerce Integrity Task Force commends Mr. Vale for his proactive transparency. We will, of course, be cooperating fully to ensure the security of Harborview's commerce." Maya stood near the back of the crowd, flanked by two of Cassian's Orchid security men. She froze. The voice. The face. It was older, more polished, the hair perfectly coiffed, but it was her. Maya's mind flashed back 2 winters. A blizzard had crippled the ironworks district. The shelters were full. She was working a 24-hour shift, treating hypothermia in a homeless encampment under a frozen overpass. A woman in a warm federal SUV. Mara Quaid had been the city liaison. She had refused to open the emergency armory, stating that resources could not be misdirected to an unsanctioned, high-risk population. Maya remembered arguing, screaming, as the woman looked at her with polite, empty eyes and drove away. 2 people died that night. And now, here she was, the mole. The one who had let the FCIT seize the wrong container, the one protecting the Dorns. Maya tried to push through the crowd to get to Cassian, but his attention was no longer on Quaid. He had stopped, mid-sentence, his head tilted slightly, his eyes lifting, scanning the roof of the warehouse across the pier. He had sensed it, the change in the air, the absolute stillness, the lack of a crosswind from the ocean. He did not shout, he moved. "Maya!" He lunged toward her, grabbing her by the arm and yanking her backward with brutal force. He shoved her behind a massive I-beam steel column just as the air split apart. A high-velocity crack echoed over the water. The bullet, intended for his heart, tore through the vinyl banner where he had been standing. Panic erupted. Reporters screamed and dove for cover. Cassian's team formed a human shield, weapons drawn. Move, get him to the vehicle. In the chaos, Cassian's eyes were fixed on the perimeter. Where is Hart? Maya's heart stopped. She looked toward the food truck where Jules had been held under guard. It was too late. A black van, which had been parked in a service lane, screeched to life. Two men in tactical gear overwhelmed the Orchid guards in a brief, violent scuffle. They dragged Jules from the truck and threw him into the van. It peeled out, disappearing into the maze of the port before anyone could react. Victor's diversion had been flawless. Cassian was roaring into his comms. Lock down the port. All exits, find that van. Maya's phone rang, not a blocked number. The screen read, Seacliff Point Prep. She answered, her hand shaking. Hello? Miss. Rowan, this is Valerie Cade. The tutor's voice was high, tight with adrenaline. We are safe. June is safe, but you need to listen to me. Maya's vision narrowed to a single point. Someone tried to pick June up, Valerie said, her words fast. He came to the front gate, a man dressed as a new security guard. He said there was a family emergency. He used your name, said you had sent him. Maya could not breathe. June did not recognize him. Valerie rushed on. She said he was not on the approved list. An Echo. Miss Rowan, the dog. Echo. He went for him, barking, showing teeth. The man panicked and ran. Orchid security got him, but it was a genuine attempt. Maya relayed the information to Cassian, her voice a hollow whisper. They went after June. The controlled fury on Cassian's face was more terrifying than any gunshot. He looked at his security lead. This is Vale, he said, his voice dropping to a lethal calm. Execute protocol lantern. Effective immediately. The lead nodded, his fingers flying on his tablet. What is a protocol lantern? Maya asked. I just locked down the Harborview Education Network. Cassian said, every school, public and private, no one enters or leaves any campus in the city without my direct authorization. Valerie and June are secure. The ride back to Horizon House was a blur of silent rage. The moment the car stopped, Maya bolted, running into the house. June? June ran from her room, her face pale, and launched herself into her mother's arms. Maya collapsed to her knees, clutching her daughter, burying her face in June's hair, her body trembling with a mixture of terror and relief. Cassian entered the house behind her. He stood in the doorway, his fists clenched at his sides. He took one step forward, his instinct to protect, to promise, to command the situation. But he stopped. He saw the private, primal bond between mother and child. He saw that his presence, his power, was an intrusion. He stepped back, remaining in the doorway, a silent, unmoving sentinel, giving them the space they needed, over June's shoulder. Maya saw his restraint. His power had locked down a city. His humanity, his choice to stand back, was what finally, irrevocably, earned her trust. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text message from a new, blocked number. It was from Catalina. We have the engineer. You have the key. A very unbalanced trade. A second message followed. Let us simplify things. Miss Rowan, exchange Jules' heart for the continued peace of your child. Maya held June tighter. The fear was gone. It had been burned away, leaving behind a core of diamond-hard resolve. She stood, pulling June with her. She looked at Cassian. She wants a trade, Maya said. I do not negotiate. Cassian said, his voice flat. I do, Maya replied, her voice as cold and hard as his. They want a meeting. We will go. But you are not the Dawn in this. I am the mother, and I will be the one setting the terms. Horizon House was compromised. The attempted kidnapping of June made it a known quantity, a target. Cassian moved them immediately, not to another fortress of glass, but to a place of shadows and anonymity. Crescent Warehouse was a converted loft in the old Cannery Row, a relic of Harborview's industrial past. Now colonized by artists and old money seeking privacy, the space was vast, ceilings supported by ancient timber beams. Tall, uncurtained windows looked out over the dark, churning bay. The wind was a low moan, pressing against the glass, making the simple linen curtains by the open door billow like ghosts. The only light came from the street lamps below, throwing watery, shifting patterns across the wide, worn wooden floors. June was back at Horizon House, which was now in total lockdown, guarded by a full Orchid team. With Valerie and Echo, she was, for the moment, safer there than anywhere else. This new location was temporary, a place to think, to plan the next move. A breath before the plunge. They stood by one of the massive arched windows, not touching, just watching the dark water. The silence in the loft was heavy, thick with the adrenaline of the day, the sniper's bullet, the chaos of the press conference, the visceral, sickening fear of the call from the school. Cassian spoke first, his voice rough, not directed at her, but at the night. My father was ambushed, pulled from his car in broad daylight, right in the financial district. I was 21. Maya turned, looking at his reflection in the dark glass. She saw the rigid control in his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. They made me watch, he continued, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. I held his hand as he bled out, and I had to promise him I was strong enough to take over. Ever since then, this obsession, losing people on my watch, failing to see the threat. He finally turned to face her, his eyes dark. Today, when that shot came, when I heard the call from the school, it was the same feeling, a failure of control, a promise being broken. Maya understood the shape of his guilt. It was a cold, familiar weight. I had a call, about 3 years ago, she said, her voice quiet. The Ironworks district, a blizzard, just like the one when I saw Quaid, an overdose in an encampment under the overpass. The man was clinically dead. No pulse, no respiration. My partner told me to call it. It was too cold. He was too far gone. She looked down at her own hands. I did not. I worked on him for 20 minutes. I intubated him on the frozen ground. I got him back. She met Cassian's gaze. I found out later he was a known predator, wanted for crimes against children. My partner asked me if I regretted saving him. Did you? Cassian asked. No. My job was not to judge him. It was to save him. He was a person and he was dying. She took a small breath. I realized that night that my role is not to decide who deserves to live. It is just to save even the bad ones. Even, she added, her voice softening, the ones who think they are too strong or too powerful to need it. He stepped closer. The air in the loft became charged, compressed. He did not reach for her. He did not try to take or to dominate. He simply lifted his hand, palm up, and held it in the space between them. It was not a command, it was a question. Maya looked at his hand, strong and scarred from a life she could only guess at. Then she looked at his eyes. She saw the dawn, the man who had locked down a city, and she saw Cassian, the man whose control was so absolute. He was terrified of the moment it broke. She did not take his hand. She stepped into his space, closing the distance. She mirrored his gesture of consent. She slowly interlaced her fingers with his. His gaze held hers, searching, asking for a clear, undeniable signal. Maya nodded just once. A small, sure movement. Then she used her free hand, not to pull, but to anchor. She slid it up his chest, feeling the heavy, rapid thud of his heart beneath her palm. It was racing as fast as hers. She rose slightly on her toes, her other hand coming up to circle the back of his neck, and gently, firmly, pulled his mouth down to hers. It was not a collision. It was a release. The kiss was slow and deep and certain. It was the complete, unspoken discharge of all the tension, the fear, the adrenaline of the past days. It was trust, given and received. His breath was a ragged sigh against her skin, hers caught in her throat. His hand, the one not holding hers, came up to her back. She felt his fingers, strong and usually so steady, tremble just slightly as they traced the line of her spine through the thin fabric of her shirt. It was the only sign of his vulnerability, of how much this moment of surrender cost him. Maya smiled against his lips, a small, reassuring gesture. She leaned her weight into him, placing her hand flat on his chest, right over his heart, a silent message. I am here. We are on the same rhythm. They moved together with the same quiet, focused intensity as when they had defused the bomb. It was a sequence of whispers, questions, and responses. There was no rush, no possession. His dark jacket slid from his shoulders, forgotten, landing silently on a nearby chair, outside. The light patter of rain began to tap against the enormous glass panes, a soft percussion against the sound of their heartbeats, which seemed to fill the room. A cold draft of wind billowed the curtains, and Maya shivered. Cassian's response was immediate. He pulled her closer, his arms encircling her completely, shielding her, enveloping her in his warmth. It was an embrace of pure protection. But for the first time in her life, it did not feel like a cage. It felt like an anchor. Later, they lay on the wide, deep sofa, tangled in a cashmere throw blanket. The city lights were a distant, blurred constellation through the rain-streaked glass. Cassian was propped on one elbow, looking down at her in the dim light. His gaze traced the lines of her face, then moved lower, to her arm. He gently touched the faint, pale line on her forearm, a scar, old and white, from a fall during a rescue years ago. He lowered his head and pressed a soft, reverent kiss to the center of it. Maya let out a breath she felt she had been holding for years. She shifted, sliding closer, and rested her forehead against his broad shoulder. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him, clean soap, wool, and the faint metallic tang of the ocean. The future was still a terrifying, unknown map, but she was not navigating it alone. The peace was shattered by a low, insistent buzz, a phone on the table. Cassian's. He let out a sharp sigh. The moment broken. He reached for it, his expression hardening as he read the screen. "Catalina," he said, his voice now flat and cold. "She wants to move," Maya asked, already sitting up, the warmth of the moment evaporating, replaced by a cold coil of focus. "She is changing the location." He showed her the screen. "She knows we are not at Horizon House. She knows we are planning something." The text message was simple. "The deal has changed. The Glass Chapel, Old Cannery Row, midnight." The time for choosing was over. The time for acting was here. Maya stood up first. She did not feel the cold. She walked to the chair and picked up her jacket, shrugging it on, then fastening her EMT belt over it. She turned back to Cassian. He was already on his feet, his own expression hardening back into the dawn. She held out her hand. He took it, his grip strong and sure. "Let's go," Maya said, her voice clear and absolute. "This time we are in charge." The name was a bitter, ironic joke. The Glass Chapel was a skeleton of industry, a massive, defunct cannery warehouse whose entire roof was a grid of grime-caked reinforced glass. The floor was grated steel, and every sound a scuff, a breath, a drop of water from the leaking ceiling was amplified, echoing up to the glass panels like a distorted hymn. It was a perfect arena for an execution, designed for maximum visibility and intimidation. Cassian and Maya entered alone, as instructed. Their footsteps rang out in the empty space. In the center, bathed in a single, harsh industrial spotlight, stood Catalina Dorn. She was flanked by 4 guards, but Victor and Jules were nowhere to be seen. "The paramedic comes to negotiate," Catalina's voice boomed, the echo giving it an unnatural power. "How progressive. What are the terms for your surrender, Miss Rowan?" Maya stepped forward, her voice steady, refusing to let the acoustics swallow her words. "This is not a negotiation. It is an exchange. We get Jules' heart, unharmed. You get a verifiable stand-down from us on the stowaway data. And," Maya's voice hardened, "you issue a permanent, verifiable ceasefire on all civilian targets, starting with my daughter's school." Catalina's laugh was a sharp, brittle sound. "You have a brave heart, little bird. Very well." She made a curt gesture. 2 guards emerged from the shadows, dragging a terrified, gagged Jules' heart. "The attacks on the schools will stop. A worthy trade for such a valuable engineer." "Not enough," Maya said, her gaze fixed on Catalina. "We know about the composite shells. We know about the ghost circuits. We want the full, unredacted stowaway list, every asset, every route, every client." Catalina's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine surprise. Ambitious. She paused, then reached into her tactical vest and pulled out a small, black USB drive. She tossed it onto the steel grating, where it skidded to a stop just short of Maya's feet. The full list, a sign of good faith. Maya knew it was a lie. The drive was a fake. This was just the opening act. Cassian had been scanning the architecture, his eyes tracing the steel beams and gantries above. "A lot of glass," he said, his voice casual but carrying. He tapped a control on his wrist comm. "Bad for the light." High above, outside the warehouse, a low whirring began. Massive, automated reflective shades, part of the Veilport network on an adjacent building, began to slide into place one by one, obscuring the moonlight. It was not just about light, it was about angles. He was systematically blinding the snipers he knew would be nested on the surrounding rooftops. While Catalina watched this unexpected move with a frown, Maya knelt as if to retrieve the drive. Instead, she pulled a digital stethoscope from her EMT belt. She pressed the diaphragm to the cold steel floor. Her eyes closed. She listened past the echo, to the vibration beneath, a faint, subsonic hum. She looked up at Cassian, her eyes wide with warning. "The floor," she whispered, her voice tight. "It's wired. Pressure plates, sonic triggers." "She is a clever girl. Your paramedic." A new voice boomed. Victor Dorn emerged from a darkened stairwell, his heavy bootsteps ringing on the metal. He held a pistol pressed firmly to the back of Jules Hart's head, forcing the engineer to his knees. "You always hated this part of the business, Cassian," Victor sneered, his face a mask of contempt. "You want to be a CEO, a philanthropist. You are not a Don if you are not willing to get your hands dirty. You are not willing to pay the price." Maya locked eyes with Cassian. He gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. "Now." Maya looked at Victor. "You are right," she called out, her voice ringing with sudden authority. "He's not like you." She spun, ignoring the drive, and ran to the wall. She slammed her palm onto the manual fire suppression override. It was not a bell. It was not water. It was a deafening, high-pressure hiss. From nozzles in the ceiling, a dense, cold mist began to spray, instantly filling the air. It was a halon system, designed to smother fires by displacing oxygen. "No," Victor roared. Blinded, the mist was a brilliant tactical move. It broke the line of sight for any remaining snipers. It also immediately condensed on unseen laser tripwires, the snap hiss of them shorting out, one after another. More importantly, it instantly saturated the air with moisture. "Sensors are live," Cassian said, his voice low in his comms, a thermal overlay now visible on his contact lenses, fed by the humidity, painted the pressure plates on the floor in glowing, deadly red. "Orchid, engage," Cassian commanded. The battle exploded. Orchid security operatives, hidden in the gantries above, repelled down into the mist. It was a disorienting vertical assault. Guards fired blind. Cassian did not join the firefight. He moved like a shadow, his feet finding the safe zones on the floor. His target, singular Victor. The two men collided, a brutal clash of force. Maya ran to Jules, who was paralyzed with terror. "Jules, crawl, move to the wall." A stray round from a guard's weapon struck the glass roof high above. A massive pane spiderwebbed with a groan of tearing metal. It gave way. Maya saw the cascade of glass fragments falling. She did not hesitate. She lunged, shoving Jules flat against the grating and shielding his head and neck with her own body. The glass shattered around them, a lethal rain of daggers, a large, sharp piece sliced across her shoulder, tearing through her jacket and sinking into the muscle. Maya cried out, a sharp, choked sound as the hot, immediate pain seared her. From a raised control platform, Catalina watched the chaos, her face a mask of fury. Her trap was sprung, her men pinned. "Fools!" she screamed, raising a small, red detonator. "This chapel is now closed." She slammed her thumb down on the button. Nothing happened. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. She hammered the button again. The pressure plates beneath their feet remained inert. Miles away, in the fortified safety of Horizon House, 8-year-old June Rowan sat beside Valerie Cade. Her small fingers were a blur on her tablet. "The patch is holding," June reported, her voice as calm as a surgeon's. "Valerie, I used the back door in the AR filter's source code, the one Catalina gave Jules. Her frequency is locked." "Good girl," Valerie said, watching the inbound data stream. "Disable it, completely." June typed one last command. "Done." In the warehouse, Maya, clutching her bleeding shoulder, understood. June, her daughter, had disarmed the bomb. Tears of fierce, burning pride blurred her vision. Victor saw it all collapse. His sister's bomb had failed. His men were down. Cassian was closing in, his face a mask of cold fury. Victor made his choice. He grabbed Jules by the hair, dragging the engineer backward toward a heavy freight elevator. He slammed the heavy gate, punched the button. The elevator began its rattling, agonizingly slow ascent to the roof. Cassian skidded to a halt. He was 20 feet from the elevator. He could pursue it. He could stop Victor, secure Jules. But then he looked back. He saw Maya on her knees, her face pale, pressing a hand to her shoulder. The fabric of her shirt was already dark and spreading. Jules was the mission. Maya was... He had to choose. The asset or the anchor. The war or the woman. Victor's taunt echoed in his ears. "You are not a Don." Cassian turned his back on the escaping elevator and ran to Maya. He dropped to the steel grating beside her, his hands hovering over her wound, his controlled expression finally breaking with a raw, visceral fear. "Maya, you are hit." He had made his choice. From the platform, Catalina watched him go to her. She had lost the engineer. She had lost the battle. But as she vanished into a dark service exit, a cold, triumphant smile touched her lips. She had found his leverage. Her voice echoed back into the misty chapel. A final, chilling promise. "This is not over. Dawn, I will see you where your power was born. I will wait for you at Pier 9. The chaos at the glass chapel immediately became a political weapon. Deputy Director Mara Quaid appeared on every major news feed within hours, her face a perfect portrait of calm, federal authority. She spoke of the unfortunate escalation of intergang violence and the reckless actions of private security firms. She did not name Cassian Vale, but she did not have to. She publicly blamed the disorder on him, painting him as a vigilante Don whose actions had endangered the city. Harborview was split. Half the city called for Vale's arrest. The other half called for him to be put in charge. Cassian, his arm bandaged where Maya had stitched the glass wound, ignored the public relations battle. He called a private emergency meeting of the Harborview Port Authority. His threat was not loud, it was absolute. If the authority did not immediately lock down Pier 9 for a full structural and security audit, he would activate a kill switch, halting every single autonomous crane and logistics vehicle in the Vale network. It would not just cripple the port, it would paralyze the city. Maya, listening from the adjacent office, stormed in. "You cannot do that, Cassian. You will stop the flow of medicine. The dock workers in the ironworks district, the ones who live day to day, you will break them just to prove a point." "It is the only way to force Quaid's hand," he countered, his voice hard. "She has to show why she is protecting that pier." "Then we do it, but we do it right." Maya insisted. She laid out a counterplan. Vale would fund a fleet of mobile medical clinics and community food trucks, positioned just outside the proposed lockdown. She would personally command them, ensuring the workers and their families were supported. It was a brilliant move, simultaneously applying pressure while managing the humanitarian fallout. He agreed without hesitation. As the port braced for the lockdown, Valerie Cade was deep in the digital weeds. "I found the connection," Valerie said, her voice tight over the encrypted line to Horizon House. "It is not just bribery. Mara Quaid is Catalina Dorn's legal godmother. And I found the money. It was being laundered through an impeccable, untouchable front, the Children Beyond Borders International Charity." Armed with this, Cassian launched his next attack. He held a second press conference, this one far more damaging. He did not just announce a security audit, he released the Veil Logistics White Book. He made public his entire logistics manifest, inviting an independent, international auditing firm to examine his books. It was a tax trap. He was putting his own corporation at immense risk, forcing the city and the federal government to choose his own brutal, painful transparency, or Mara Quaid's corrupt, secretive control. Maya, meanwhile, went to the secure safe house where Orchid Security was holding Jules' heart. Orchid had intercepted him on the roof of the glass chapel, abandoned by Victor, who had chosen to escape alone rather than be burdened by a hostage. Jules was a broken man. "Why, Jules," Maya asked, her voice quiet. "You knew what they were. You knew Cassian was funding your old projects." Tears streamed down the engineer's face. "My daughter," he whispered. "She has a rare immune disorder. She needed treatment in Switzerland. Her medical visa was lost. Red tape. Victor Dorn found out. He said Mara Quaid could approve it in an hour. He said all I had to do was plant the bomb and give June the filter. He used my daughter, so I let him use yours." The cold, precise evil of it chilled Maya to the bone. They were leveraging a child's life. "Jules," she said, her voice firm, help me stop Stowaway. Help me find the children they are trapping in those containers, and I swear to you, I will personally get your daughter the medical and legal help she needs." He looked up, a fragile hope in his eyes, and nodded. They had to split the Dorn siblings, using Jules's intel on their protocols. Cassian's team fabricated a high-level source, leaking information that Cassian Vale was moving his entire command operations to the penthouse of the Mariner Hotel. The bait was set. Victor, the brute, took it. Orchid Intelligence confirmed a massive movement of Sable Crown tactical teams toward the downtown hotel, pulling resources from the docks. But Catalina was smarter. She did not trust an easy victory. Maya's personal phone buzzed, a new video file. Her blood ran cold. It was June. The video was live. She was in her room at Horizon House, safe, playing with the STEM robotics kit. Echo. The K9 nudged the small robot with his nose, and June laughed. A text message followed. "He is safe. Miss Rowan, as long as you are where you are supposed to be, Victor can have his war at the hotel. You and I have a different rendezvous. Pier 9. Do not be late." Cassian saw the video, and a deep, violent rage hardened his face. His first instinct was to pull every agent, every gun, back to Horizon House, to build a wall of steel around the girl. But he stopped. He looked at Maya. He saw the terror in her eyes, but beneath it, he saw the mother, the protector, who had drawn her line in the sand. He turned to his command terminal. "Valerie," he ordered, his voice crisp. "All security feeds at Horizon House, interior, exterior, and Echo's body cam. Transfer primary control authorization to Miss Rowan's tablet, effective immediately. My team moves to observation only. She has the key." Maya looked at him, a profound, silent understanding passing between them. He was giving her the keys. He was not just protecting her, he was respecting her. He was honoring her veto. She watched the feeds on her tablet for a long, steady minute, her daughter's laughter a bizarre counterpoint to the tension. June was safe. She looked up at Cassian. "Pier 9, she said. "Pier 9, he confirmed. Checking his watch, the clock was ticking toward midnight. High tide. The final showdown was set for 12:30 a.m. Pier 9 was not just a dock, it was the heart of the Vale Empire, the place Cassian's father had built and died for. Tonight, it was a war zone. The sky over Harborview was a bruised, starless purple, rumbling with the sound of the approaching storm. The gantry cranes, massive and unlit, stood against the skyline like the skeletal ribs of forgotten gods. On the ground, shipping containers were stacked 7 high, creating a dark, suffocating maze of steel. Maya moved through the shadows, not as a victim, but as a commander. She wore her black EMS tactical jacket, her stethoscope tucked alongside a secured radio earpiece. She was not alone. Behind her moved a hybrid Team 2 of Cassian's Orchid operatives, flanked by 3 volunteers from the dockworkers' community men and women who had trusted her with their health and who would now trust her with their lives. Cassian stood at the head of the pier, a ghost in the dim utility light. He wore no helmet, just a minimalist, dark ballistic vest over his suit. He looked at the labyrinth of containers, a kingdom he knew by heart. He raised his radio, his voice calm, carrying to every member of his team scattered through the port. "This is Vale. Orchid is primary. SCSCU assets loyal to Quaid are to be considered hostile. Engage only to disarm. We are not here to win a war. We are here to prevent one. Tonight, the rules change." A rumble, deeper than the thunder, shook the pier. The ground vibrated. From the far end of the yard, the headlights of a massive container hauler flashed to life. Then another, and another. Victor Dorn was not at the hotel. His forces may have been, but the man himself was here. He was using the haulers as battering rams, creating a moving wall of steel, sealing the pier, trapping them. Cassian Maya's voice was sharp over the comms. "Look up." On a maintenance lift, high above the container stacks, Catalina Dorn rose into view. She was bathed in the cold, white light of a spotlight, her hair whipping in the wind. In her hand, she held a multi-channel detonator. "Welcome to the christening, Dawn," she screamed, her voice echoing over the metal. "You wanted your port clean, I will scrub it clean for you." Her free hand gestured to a row of 12 containers, all marked with the insignia of the Children Beyond Borders charity. "These are the stowaway containers." Maya breathed, her blood turning to ice. They were not filled with drugs. They were filled with people. "She has them linked, a dead man's switch on all 12. Maya looked down at her own tablet, at the schematic June had decrypted, the R pattern, the redundancy nodes. It was not just a list of decoys. "Cassian," she said, her voice urgent, "it is the power grid. The R is not a container. It is a location, the redundancy node. It is the Achilles heel of their network. It is a single power junction that controls this entire section of the pier. If I can cut that leg, the entire chain becomes a broken circuit," Cassian finished, understanding immediately. "The detonator loses its handshake. Where is it?" Maya pointed. "According to this, it is inside that central control block, 300 yards from here." "Go," he said. "My team will cover you. Victor is mine." The first sirens wailed. The SCSCU had arrived, squad cars flooding the entrance to the pier. But they were not a unified force. One group, led by a captain Maya recognized from Quaid's press conference, immediately moved to block Cassian's Orchid team. "Vale, stand down. You are in violation of a federal quarantine." From the other side, a younger officer, Lieutenant Noah Bell, ignored the order. "All units, fire and EMS are on the pier. Civilian lives are at risk. Form a protective perimeter now." He and his squad were secretly, defiantly, giving Maya the opening she needed. The battle exploded. It was an opera of steel and electricity. Cassian did not wait. He bypassed the firefight on the ground, vaulting onto a stack of containers and sprinting, using the chaos as cover. He climbed, ascending the gantry frame, a 20-meter lattice of steel. Victor met him halfway. The two men collided on a narrow catwalk, the wind howling around them. It was a brutal, primal fight. Fists on metal, the clang of a wrench swinging, the grate of boots on steel. Sparks flew from their struggle, falling like fireflies into the darkness as the salt spray from the ocean lashed their faces. Maya was running, shielded by Bell's officers and her own team. She reached the control block, a solid steel box. The door was locked. "Orchid," she panted. "I cannot get through." "Miss, Rowan, use the jaws," the operative with her said, handing her the heavy hydraulic rescue tool. "We will cover the door." She clamped the massive shears onto the locking mechanism. The motor whined, and she put her full weight into it, her injured shoulder screaming in protest. The steel groaned, buckled, and snapped. She fell inside, into a dark corridor of whirring servers. She navigated by the light of her tablet, following June's schematic. She found the central junction. It was a mass of armored cables. She opened her comms to a private channel. June, honey, can you hear me miles away? Her daughter's small, clear voice came back. Loud and clear, Mom, the simulation is running. The R leg is the primary. I see it, Maya whispered, her hands tracing the thickest cable. I am going to cut, just like we practiced in your game. Okay, Mom, June said. Be careful. Maya positioned the hydraulic shears. Here I go. High above, Catalina watched Cassian and Victor. She saw Maya's team breach the control box. She had waited long enough. Goodbye, Dawn, she shrieked and slammed her thumb onto the red button. Click. Every spotlight on the pier died. The hum of the servers went silent. The wail of the sirens cut out as the power grid failed. Catalina stared at the useless detonator in her hand. The confirmation light was black. It had no signal. It had no power. Maya had cut the R leg. On the catwalk, the sudden blackout broke Victor's rhythm. Cassian did not pause. He used the disorientation, hooking his leg around Victor's and twisting. Victor lost his footing, his scream torn away by the wind as he fell over the edge. He was saved by his own safety harness, left to hang, defeated and dangling. 20 meters above the concrete, Catalina, enraged, saw Maya emerge from the control block. She ripped her sidearm from its holster. Her target no longer Cassian, but the paramedic who had ruined everything. Maya, Cassian roared. Seeing the move, he launched himself from the catwalk, a desperate, flying tackle. He did not aim for Catalina. He aimed for Maya. He hit her, shielding her with his body. Just as Catalina fired, the bullet, meant for Maya's heart, tore through the flesh of Cassian's shoulder, a searing, hot impact. He grunted in pain but did not release his hold on her. Maya, seeing Cassian hit, reacted with pure, cold instinct. She did not reach for a gun. She grabbed the rescue line thrower from her belt, a high-pressure device that fired a grappling hook and line. She aimed. She fired. The hook snagged the pistol in Catalina's hand, the force of the compressed air ripping the weapon from her grasp, sending it clattering into the darkness below. Catalina stood, unarmed, defeated, as if the tension had finally broken the sky. The clouds opened, but it was not rain. It was the sound of every ship horn in Harborview, a low, deafening chorus of victory. From the edges of the port, from the ironworks district, a new sound emerged, the sound of people, cheering. Harborview was free. The power vacuum lasted only moments. As the pier lights flickered back on, a new fleet of vehicles arrived FCIT, led by Mara Quaid, who stepped onto the dock like a queen taking a fortress. Secure the prisoners, she commanded, her eyes landing on Cassian. Mr. Vale, you are under arrest for... Deputy Director Quaid, a new, clear voice cut through. Lieutenant Noah Bell stepped forward, his SCSCU squad flanking him, their weapons not aimed at Cassian, but at the FCIT. He held up a tablet. While you were organizing your arrest, we were live streaming this. He hit a button, and the feed played on the pier's main monitor. Is the verified transfer ledger from the Children Beyond Borders charity, moving $6 million directly into a holding company owned by the Sable Crown Syndicate. The transfer was authorized by you, ma'am, 36 hours ago. Quaid's face, usually so polished, turned a sickly white. Her own agents looked at her, then at Bell, then back at their boss. This is fabricated evidence, she stammered. It is being verified by 3 independent forensic accountants as we speak. Ma'am, Bell said, his voice cold, you are under arrest for conspiracy, aiding a criminal enterprise, and human trafficking. The FCIT agents, realizing their boss was the true mole, looked stunned. 2 federal marshals stepped forward and took her by the arms. Catalina, watching this, laughed, a dry, bitter sound. As they put the cuffs on her, she looked at Cassian, who was now being tended to by Maya. You chose a heart over power, Dawn, she spat. You could have had this city. You chose her. Cassian winced as Maya tightened the bandage on his shoulder. He met Catalina's gaze. I just chose how to use my power. Victor was hauled up from his harness, soaked and defeated. He was cuffed and led away. As he passed Maya, his gaze, usually so full of brute arrogance, was confused. He looked at the line thrower on her belt, the tool she had used to disarm his sister rather than the gun she could have used on him. He looked at the woman who had, by saving him, refused to become him. He said nothing as they pushed him into the car. The fallout was fast. The stowaway containers were opened, their human cargo freed, Jules' heart. Now the federal government's star witness gave a full confession. Maya, true to her word, made 2 calls, one to a private trauma clinic in Switzerland, the other to an immigration lawyer, within a day. Jules' daughter was on a medically chartered flight, and he was in protective custody, ready to burn the old world to the ground. Cassian did not wait for the city to thank him. He called one last press conference. He stood before the cameras, his arm in a sling, Maya standing just behind the crowd. He did not talk about the Dorns or Mara Quaid. He talked about his father. He announced he was dissolving the Vale Consortium as a private entity. He was restructuring, moving the entirety of the port's commercial operations into the Vale Civic Trust, a new organization to be governed by an independent, civilian-led board. "The shadows my father operated in are gone," he stated, his voice raw. "Harborview deserves the truth." He finished by announcing he was turning himself over to the city's Civilian Review Board to face a full investigation into his own actions. The city, stunned by his move, responded. The Open Port, Open Heart campaign launched. The mobile medical clinics Maya had organized became permanent fixtures. Soup kitchens and community centers sprang up. Vale Logistics. Now the Vale Trust announced a new robotics scholarship for children in the Ironworks district. The first recipient, and the program's smiling inspiration, was June Rowan. Weeks later, the air was clean, the night quiet. Maya stood on the terrace of Horizon House. The city lights below were yellow and peaceful. She wore one of Cassian's heavy cashmere coats over her scrubs, the scent of him a comfort in the salt wind. She heard the slide of the glass door. Cassian stepped out. He had stopped a few feet away. He had given her his trust, his power, and his vulnerability. But he did not assume. He stood, watching her, a quiet question in his eyes. Maya smiled, a slow, easy smile. She held out her hand. He covered the distance, his hand taking hers, lacing their fingers together. She pulled him closer, rising to meet him. The kiss was not the desperate, adrenaline-fueled release in the warehouse. It was deep and gentle and sure. It was a commitment made in the quiet. His other arm came around her, holding her securely. Her head rested against his chest, their breathing aligning. It felt undeniably like coming home. He leaned down, his lips brushing her hair. He whispered the words that had started it all. But the meaning was new, transformed by everything they had survived. "You think you can hide?" Maya tilted her head back, looking up at him, her eyes shining in the starlight. "I am not hiding anymore," she whispered back. "I am just choosing where to stand." He breathed in, a shaky, human breath. Then slowly, he knelt on one knee. He did not pull out a diamond. He opened a small, simple box. Inside was a ring, a simple band of white gold carved with the subtle, continuous pattern of the Harborview waves. "The city is broken, Maya, and so am I. I cannot fix it alone. Please," his voice was thick, "build a kind city with me." Tears, bright as the port lights, welled in her eyes. She nodded, unable to speak. "Yes." The sound of the sliding glass door was followed by a pop and a shower of confetti. June and Echo burst onto the terrace, June holding a belated birthday popper. "She said yes," June cheered, launching herself into their embrace. Cassian laughed, a real, unguarded sound, as he pulled both mother and daughter into his arms. The camera pulled back, lifting high above the house, soaring over the city. Below, Pier 9 was alive with light, the massive cranes moving in a steady, rhythmic dance, like the giant, beating heart of Harborview, rebuilt. Love does not erase the past, it rewrites the rules of the future. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am dying to know where you are listening from, so please comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Story, give this video a like, and if you can, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more listeners.